Welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast, your ultimate ride into the world of motorcycles. Visit cyclesworldwide.com where we offer a completely free marketplace for everything motorcycles. Join our One Gang community where you can connect, share info, and swap stories with riders from all over the world. Join for free at cyclesworldwide.com and be a part of the One Gang community right now.
On today's episode of the One Gang Worldwide podcast, we're joined by a truly inspiring figure in the motorcycle community, Gevin Fax, a seasoned rider with a passion for long-distance touring and advocating for diversity within the biking world. In this episode, Gevin shares her journey across the continents on two wheels, her experiences as a female motorcyclist, and her efforts to promote inclusivity and empowerment through riding. So kick your stands up and join us as we hit the road with Gevin Fax, right here on the One Gang podcast.
And he's looking over my shoulder, and he looks at me and he goes, "Oh my God." And I'm looking at the same thing he's looking at. He goes, "It looks like there's sand in your primary, in the oil and everything." And I went, "No." And he goes, "Is there anybody that doesn't like you?"
Hey guys, welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast. We got an amazing guest with us today, Gevin Fax. What a story this young woman has to tell us, and we can't wait to hear it. So thank you so much, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm just thrilled to be here.
We're excited to have you. We want to start back in the early days. You grew up in LA in the 60s, and we're curious take us into the young life of Gevin Fax. We want to hear the details, what it was like growing up.
Well, tell you, I was one of those crazy kids. I mean, as you can tell, okay, first of all, I'm just going to open it up with this. I'm 7 years old and I'm high energy now. So if you can imagine that, and this is all natural. Like I don't drink caffeine. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink it because I have sleeping if I'm going to get a good night's sleep at all. I don't know why I have all this energy. I assumed that I might've been ADHD and because I still have this now. But I was just one of those kids that wanted to do everything. I mean, I played basketball, I played volleyball, I ran track. I played basketball every minute of the day. And when I wasn't playing basketball, I was on my bicycle. I earned enough money just from working around the neighborhood to buy, one of the old Stingray bicycles with the Springer.
Oh, yeah.
On it. And, I wanted to be a biker. I always knew I wanted to be a biker because I loved motorcycles. And so what I would do is, how kids usually put little cards in their back wheel.
Yeah, in the back for the spokes to make the noise.
Yeah.
With the clothespin, of course, and the exhaust, the homemade exhaust.
I had the split back wheel, the big wide tire and everything. I mean, back then with the Springer front end. And so but I didn't put a little card in mine. My dad was like a interior, exterior painter and decorator. And so he had these big cardboard pieces and he had these real heavy duty, like clothespins. So while the other kids were like, I was like, yeah. So it started.
That's awesome.
It started really young. And then by the time I was 10, actually, Dad had thrown me on a mini bike when I was 8. And I think that's what really changed everything.
Right.
I mean, I got hooked. And then everything with cycles. And it was like, I just knew that I wanted to be a biker. I knew I wanted to be a Hell's Angel.
Did your dad ride? Was he riding bikes, or was he like with the dirt bike that he got you? Did he get it to you because he knew you like bicycles and he wanted to take you to the next step, or was he a rider himself and kind of wanted to introduce you to it?
My dad was never a rider, but he always loved the motorcycle. Being an African-American man, he was struggling just to be able to keep himself afloat, and then with the family. And then because of the fact, once he got the family after he got out of the Navy, once he got the family, he was like, I'm their only source of income. And if something happens to me, my wife wouldn't be able to take care of the family by herself. Well, on her, my mother was a medical secretary. She passed in 2011. She worked for UCLA for many, many years. And she was one of the top secretaries there. I mean, all the doctors loved her because she transcribed everything. She knew shorthand better than anybody else. But so my dad, he had ridden on motorcycles, but on the back, he like one of his friends said, "Hey, I want you to ride on the back of this Harley." And then because the guy had a Harley and an Indian, and he said he got to ride on both because his friend took him for a ride on these two different bikes. And he said that he actually liked, he had like a smaller bike besides the Indian and the Harleys, but he talked about the Indians and the Harleys being so much smoother going over the railroad tracks, but he always loved,
Yeah.
yeah, he always loved it, but could never do it. And so I think that
God.
he just kind of instilled it in me. Now he didn't buy me a mini bike. He took me to a mini bike like place where they had mini bikes and threw me there. And I started riding and saw this race that was going on. And my dad said, go on over and do that race. And I go, but Dad, it's all little boys. And he goes, well, that's never stopped you before. And I was like, okay, whatever you do, keep the inside edge. Don't let him get the inside edge. Just come out, twist him out. And I got on the bike, went over there, and I won my race. And the race.
Dang. So that is another part of the question is like, besides that, are there any other pivotal moments in your early life that pushed you towards motorcycles?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, before I got the moped that he'd gotten for me, I remember, well, actually, no, it was just a little after I had the moped, so I was riding the moped around, but I was standing on the corner of La Brea and Sycamore, which was where we used to live in LA, and a black woman blew by me on a 750 Ducati. And I was like, I can do.
Sold.
And that was pivotal for.
That's cool.
I had never, in the movies and in television, there was no one that was doing what I was doing. There were not even any little girls that were doing what I was doing when I was doing it in real time with all the little boys. I was doing hook slides, wheelies, and I could outride all the boys. I could outplay them in basketball, because we were all the same size. I remember taking a punch to the face from a 13-year-old kid that I beat playing one-on-one because he was so humiliated.
Wow.
Right.
Secure.
He socked me in the face, knocked me silly. I saw cartoon stars. I didn't know that was real until then.
Wow.
Yeah, he bloodied my lip, hit my tooth. Yeah, it was one of those things.
So you were pretty coordinated growing up. Playing sports, riding dirt bikes. You could hang, man. You were definitely a person. We'd all be hanging together. That's for sure. If we took us back then. Well, listen. Going into the next step, you had a pretty amazing music career in addition. So this is going to be kind of multiple part questions, but I'm going to kind of ask one at a time. Can you take us through like when it started, who pointed you towards music, and some bands that truly influenced your sound?
Sure. Well, honestly, the music thing started with my mom and then later with my dad. My mother was an amazing singer and performer, although she didn't perform professionally, but she could have. And so she and her sister, my aunt Shirley, taught me to sing. And so, they taught me 3-part harmony. So we would do everything in 3-part harmony. So I started singing at a very young age. By the time I 10, 11, we were Catholic and I would go to guitar mass all the time. And I thought, I really want to learn to play guitar. So I told my dad, and my mother was like, no, I wanted to play piano. And Dad's like, look, she likes to play basketball. She likes to play all these other things. If you make her play piano, she's going to have to give up those other things and she's going to hate it. And he said, I'm going to get her a guitar. That way she can do all the other things and still play music. So he did. He got me a guitar and I started playing in the guitar masses with, all the church people. And I did that for several years until by the time I was 13, which is another whole story in itself, we ended up relocating the entire family, my father, my mother, my brothers, back to Ohio. And when I got back there, I was playing guitar by that time because I'd been playing so much in the churches and singing. So I would play for my friends and I was skiing and I happened to be at a ski lodge. And this was when I was a freshman in high school. I happened to be at a ski lodge playing for my friends. And the general manager walked up to me and said, hey, I'd really like to hire you. Well, even though I was like 14 by then, I looked 30. I always looked older than the body that you're looking at now, aside from my old face, but the body that you're looking at now is what I look like at 13. So I naturally, men hitting on me and asking me questions.
Right, at such a young age, yeah.
Yeah, and I was telling them, I'm sorry, I'm 13. They're like, you are not 13. I'm like, no, I'm really 13. My mom tells them sometimes, I'm 13 years old. So, and I said, I'm 14, and he said, I don't care. He said, I can have your parents sign a waiver that can have you play in the lodge. even though there's beer being served, and so the rest is history. That was my first professional job. And so
That's
I
cool.
just kept playing until, I played all the way. That was my work. That was my job. Besides working, besides going to school and playing sport, every kind of sport you
Right.
can imagine. So I did all of that. And then by the time it was time for me to graduate, I went to Ohio State University, got picked up on the women's varsity squad for basketball and the women's varsity squad for track, and literally sang my way through college. I had a small athletic scholarship and a small academic scholarship because I was a straight A student, and the rest I had to make up. So I literally sang at the coffee house. So I was all over Columbus, Ohio, singing professionally. And then, then I graduated from college, and with a good career actually from basketball. We were fourth in the nation. I was one of the fastest guards on the team. I was a point guard. I wasn't a starting guard, but I was definitely the relief guard. And I was I was first walk on as a freshman. I was a walk on
That's
for
cool.
varsity
Wow.
traveling team. But so I went through college, graduated from
Awesome.
college, and then started working corporate, which is another story in itself. Went all through there, started my own band, which was very successful in Ohio. And by the time
what kind of music did you guys jam?
rock and roll, I was a
Yeah,
rocker.
nice. Nice.
In Ohio, it was country, country and rock and roll in
Yep.
Ohio. So my whole genre changed. I always liked Led Zeppelin when I was in LA. I loved Led Zeppelin. My first boyfriend introduced me to Led Zeppelin. I was hooked after that. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah,
blues and rock. This is who I am.
agreed.
Yeah. And so that was what spawned my love for, classic rock. And the fact that my mother introduced us to like Tchaikovsky, Beethoven,
Wow.
Mozart. So I had a classical
Cool.
background as well, although I didn't read music, but I liked the melodies and the way things were orchestrated. But I definitely was a rock and roller. I became a rock and roller when I was, by 13, I was into nothing but, Zeppelin and Cream and Mountain,
Nice.
Hey, how old were you when you started making a name for yourself in the music industry?
Actually, I started making a name for myself when I first started playing in California, in LA, because my best friend Jay Cherry and I would go to the Tar Pit. It was La Brea Tar Pit, and we would sing there, and we would draw these huge crowds in the park. And so we made money that way. They would put a little money in the jar, and I got to share this one thing with you. So we're just
Of
little
course.
kids, and we're making all this money just playing guitar and singing and doing.
How old? How old? Sorry to interrupt. How old
Well,
at this
it's
point?
12. At
Wow, no
12.
shit, that early. Damn.
Well,
Jeez.
yeah, because we'd walk to the park and then sit down and play guitar, and we'd draw these huge crowds. And so we loved the Woodstock album. So we started learning all the songs off the Woodstock album from Woodstock, and we started singing called Masturbation. Now, we didn't know what masturbation was. So we're singing this song, and everybody starts laughing, and we're like, we didn't know. So we didn't know what was going on, and we got this round of applause. We finished it, and all the people were putting in the jar. So I went home, and Mom goes, well, how was your day? Because it was the summertime, and we both looked at her and said,
No.
we sang this really cool song that we learned from the Woodstock album. She goes, well, what was it? And we said, it's called Masturbation. My mother said, what?
Oh no.
Just like, oh,
That's awesome.
yeah. So that was a very, learned what that was at a very.
That's cool. That's cool. What was there anyone who discovered you later on, kind of like to take you to that next step of your life with the music that you're still thankful for, that
Oh,
kind
no.
of brought you off that more into the limelight?
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, I had a professional singing career, but it was, menial. But I was very successful with the band in Ohio, and we were playing the River Run. We were playing to standing room only bands, nightclubs. So that, we were definitely getting notoriety and recognition. Well, within the 7th year of the band, we broke up, but I continued playing. And then what happened was, I ended up coming out to California to visit my parents because they had moved back. I stayed in Ohio. I didn't move right away because I was an adult by then. I thought, I have my life.
Right.
Sure. And this was in Ohio. And so my parents moved back and I stayed in Ohio while I continued with the band. Well, what happened is when I came out to visit my parents here in LA, I went to the beach over at Venice Beach because I love, walking along the sand. And I ended up, there was a woman that saw me and it was very early in the morning. And she goes, "Hey, do you mind if I walk with you?" I'm like, we just struck up a conversation. And she says, "Well, so what do you do?" And I told her and I said, "But I'm actually a musician and an actor, but on the lower level, but that's my passion." And she said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, what do you play?" And I said, "Well, I play acoustic guitar, but I also play electric bass and I have a full band." And she's like, "Well, really?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Have you ever heard of the band called Climax?" And that's Klymaxx. And I said, "Well, yeah, they did Meeting in the Ladies Room, I Miss You, and they had a gold album in 1980. And she says, "Yeah." She says, "I'm the manager for them." And I went, "Oh my God, I'm looking for a bass player." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah." She says, "So why don't you have your manager send over, your information, a reel and your demo tape and all that. And let's see what we can do." So I did. Long story short, fast wind forward, within a year, they flew me with a one-way ticket to LA from Ohio to work with the band. And I was in the studio with the band with LL Cool J and Quincy Jones,
Wow.
Cool.
others. Yeah. So there I was, I was in my 20s by then. There I was in the studio working with these like legends,
Yeah.
Robinson came in. I mean, it was just awesome. So there I was working with an all-female funk band. And I worked with them on their last album in 1990 called The Max Is Back. And it got onto the Billboard charts and everybody's screaming, "Oh my God, you got a bullet, you got a bullet." And they're whining and dining us. And I'm getting toted around in limos and they're buying us clothes and anywhere
Wow.
people are hounding us. We did Soul Train and people were trying to pull us off the stage because they wanted to touch us. It was like amazing. I mean,
Jeez.
it was like what I had in Ohio, but in Ohio, it was, all the locals, but this was international, with
Yeah,
James.
yeah.
And so what happened
And
was,
Climax was a huge band in the 80s.
oh yeah, no, they were huge. Like they had a gold album in 1987.
Right.
Yeah, they had a gold album. So I mean, I was on the map, so to speak. It was a
That's
contract
awesome.
because they had lost their bass player, and I filled the bill because they needed somebody that could play, sing, and dance at the same time, and look like their old bass player, so that the transition wouldn't look too obvious.
Gotcha.
And Cinderella, who that's what they called her then, but then they called her Spinderella when she worked for Salt and Pepper. So her name's Joyce. She and I look very similar. We have a very similar body type, very similar, stature, everything. So I got hired. And once we finished Soul Train, the single got onto the Billboard charts in the top 100. And now it's like shooting up the Billboard chart. So,
Wow.
everybody's yelling,
Wow.
"Well, and all of, everybody's going crazy."
Yeah.
And they're still whining and dining us. And we get all the way to the top 25. We get into the top 15. We get into we hit number 13. And by the time we get, they're like, "Okay, you're going to go to Korea. You're going to go to Germany. You're going to go to Paris. You're going to go to London. This is where this tour is going to happen." And we're like, and I remember feeling, God, I've made it, when I was in the mall because all of us were shopping. And all of a sudden, our song came over the radio in the mall. Like, oh,
That's got to be surreal.
It was. It was like, oh my goodness, I made it. So that's what put me over the top there. But once it hit number 13, plateaued and fell off the charts, and then it was like, "And who are you guys again?"
Right. How long did you play with them, and how old were you at this point in your life?
Well, let me think here. Let's see. I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I think it was 29. It was 29 or 30 years.
Gotcha.
But, yeah.
So you were at that point right there where people kind of like move forward. You know what I mean? Like it's that point in your life, like going into your 30s. I mean, and you're playing with a major band. I mean, that's incredible. That's got to be incredible.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we got to, like I said, we got to play in front of some really, really large performance, audiences, and then of course being on television, we did VH1, we did MTV, we did Soul Train, it was quite a journey. It really was. It was quite a journey.
Was there anybody that you met out of the singers that you mentioned that you really, really liked and kind of bonded with? That you Quincy Jones, yeah, he's got to be an incredible person to talk to.
He's an incredible person. LL Cool J is nice as well. Both of them were very, very lovely, lovely human beings. I mean, they were very cordial. They were working with us on the album, so it was nice to get that kind of legendary input into something.
Yeah,
Working,
man.
they worked with me on the bass. They were like, okay, well, instead of doing this, how about this? Or try this. Here, we're going to do this overlap. It was fun. It was really a lot of fun. But just being able to be in the same company as two legends was, I mean,
Yeah,
especially
for sure, man. Yeah, Quincy is
when we did a Soul Train, Cornelius is he was the
host. Yeah,
to get to meet him. He was quite an interesting man.
Hey, I'm gonna admit it. I used to watch Soul Train. I enjoyed it. Oh,
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I liked it, man.
Incredible.
I always thought it was cool, a cool show. Everybody danced well. I don't dance well, so for me, it was kind of like living through them.
Yeah, well, that's what it was for me. I mean, I watched Soul Train. I didn't really watch American Bandstand that much. Occasionally I would, but I watched Soul Train because, everybody just seemed to be so live, and hot.
Right.
And it was really cool. It was really a cool show.
Incredible. So I'm curious, you've been empowering women for so long and you've got a gift for it clearly. And I'm curious if there were outside factors that brought you confidence and empowered you yourself outside of maybe your parents and your athleticism at a young age. Do you have any examples of things that were empowering for you growing up?
Well, outside of my parents, that's a tough one because really, I was surrounded by nothing but Caucasian people growing up because my parents were insistent on making sure that I was in good school. So I generally 99% of the time I was the only African American kid in a school. So, I really didn't have many role models because there was no one that looked like me. There was really nobody that really nurtured me as much as my parents did. And it's really interesting to say that. So I had no role models for basketball. I had no role models for singing, with the exception of my mother. But then that's incorporating my parents. As far as being encouraged, it was always my parents. It was my father saying, "Never take care. Whatever you do, just keep pushing, keep trying, be tenacious. Don't be negative. Always be positive and kind." So. No, I mean, honestly, I really grew up with, so people ask me, well, who are your heroes? I said, my mom and dad, who's dad? Those were the people to, because I didn't see anybody that even resembled me on screen, or in music or in motorcycling. It was, I had no one in that regard. So,
Gotcha.
I didn't have anything change for that for me, probably until I got into college. At which point, I was coached by Tara Vanderveer. Now, Tara Vanderveer was the woman that took our U.S. women's basketball team to the Olympics. Well, when Tara Vanderveer...
That's why the name sounds familiar.
Okay. When Tara was doing her student teaching at Ohio State University, she coached me. So I had the opportunity to be coached by the future Olympian, gold medalist, the woman.
U.S.
So
right,
cool.
U.S. I know, that's so awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, and I hold on to that. I have pictures with her when I was playing for Ohio State. So in fact, I need to post that because no one would believe that. But yeah, I've got pictures with her when I was playing for Ohio State. So in that regard, she was definitely somebody that pushed me because I was one of the fastest guards on the team. But I was unpolished, if you will. I was a scrapper, which was great, but I didn't know what a pick was. I didn't know what a moving screen was, all these little things that other kids had learned because they were in better high schools than I was. I was in a farm school,
Right.
We'd moved to Ohio by then.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not dissing
No, it's not. It's just the truth. It's the truth.
Well, High was a wonderful school. I mean, because I was there in such a nut about sport, we ended up being the West Central Ohio Conference champions in every sport the for 4 years
Jeez.
there for volleyball, track,
That's
softball,
cool.
God.
everything,
Nice.
ping pong, billiard. We were the WCOC champions for the 4 years I was there, and then I got put into the Hall of Fame when I was in Ohio. So,
That's
and
so
even
cool.
when I was in high school, didn't they didn't support me. You know what I mean? I mean, they were happy that I, could make all the baskets and make all the points, but there were times when I was not supported, and I actually had to seek out Ohio State University on my own. No one ever called them and said, "Hey, look, we've got this guard that scores 40
Right,
points
Oh,
a
wow.
game." I did that on my own. I did
Yeah.
my own research and got myself to Ohio State University and worked my way through college on my own.
Wow.
Now when I got older, of course, to your question, that was when it started to change. So I have to give credit to people like Courtney Caldwell, who had the magazine called American Woman Motor Scene Magazine. I worked for her for a year, and after I worked for her for a year, she found out my background. She put me on the cover of her magazine, and that pretty much catapulted me into the next level. And then Chris Summer Simmons, who is Pat Simmons' wife, Pat Simmons of the Doobie Brothers, she and I were working together, and she also had a magazine called Harley Women. She too put me on the cover of her magazine. So if it hadn't been for
Jeez.
Caldwell and Chris Summer Simmons believing in me and boosting me and putting me on the cover of their magazine, talking about all the things I had done prior to being on their cover, my career never
Yeah.
would have taken off. So those are my role models. It's Chris and definitely Courtney Caldwell. And,
Awesome.
now, strangely enough, it has always been women that have supported me and put me on a pedestal and moved me forward. So, the very people that I spent all this time to empower, because women and young women will always come to me and go, "Oh my gosh, how do you do that?" I'm like, I just go in the direction that's
Do it.
curious to me, and I just do it. And they said, "But aren't you afraid?" Or what? I said, "Absolutely." I said, "But I do it anyway." I mean, it's about living your dare. We we live out of fear half of the time, and I would tell people, look, I will support you in this. If you want to learn to ride a motorcycle, I will support you. I will help you buy the bike. I will help you, learn how to ride it. I will point you in the right direction. You just tell me what you need to do or what you want or what you need, and I will be there for you. And so I've taught women to play guitar. I've taught women to, play in different sports. I've taught women to ride motorcycles. I've taught women to ride, sports cars. I've, stitch shift, you name it. It's like I've always wanted women to do the thing that I do. Now, I'm the only
That's
female in
awesome.
my family besides my mother. And like I said, my mother passed in 2011. I have brothers. I have two brothers. I don't have any sisters. So for me, all
Okay.
women through the ages have become my sisters. So I have thousands of sisters all over the world.
So cool. Your portfolio is overwhelming in the best way that I can state it. And I'm curious the different ways that you have empowered and the different organizations you've been a part of. What can you talk some about that and what your favorite things have been throughout the years to be a part of?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, as you can imagine, my career has gone up and down. I mean, there's been times when I've made a lot of money acting and then no money at all. Same thing with motorcycling. There's times when I've made good money being like a professional motorcyclist. And then there's times when
Hot and cold, yeah.
I used to be a test driver, motorcycle mechanic, which definitely helped with learning to ride better as well as working on the motorcycle. But what I have to say in regard to that, the one thing that has continuously shined through has been definitely the music. But the thing that's made me the most money over the years has been motorcycle. And
That's cool.
that has come about in the strangest ways. I mean, like I said, by the time 1994 came around, I had already been on the cover of 3 magazines, and
Jeez.
then Chris Summer Simmons got information on a Discovery Channel shoot that was being done by Turner Broadcasting. And long story short, I ended up being in that documentary as a co-star with Chris Summer Simmons, Jamie Elvidge, Gail DeMarco, and then myself, called Biker Women. And that
Mhm.
was funded by Turner Broadcasting, Ted Turner. And well, it's an interesting story how that came about, as a matter of fact. Ted Turner had just done, Harley Davidson, The American Legend, and Jay Leno was in it, and Peter Fonda, you guys can remember. And so it was a huge success. So what happened was he and his wife, Jane, at the time, were in their jet coming back. And he goes, so what do you think of, The American Legend? And she goes, well, I think it's great. She says, it was a wonderful show and it was very successful. She said, but what about the women? And he goes, I never thought about that. So that's what spawned the idea. And so he went out in search of trying to find a production crew that would do a documentary on biker women. And that wasn't even the name at the time. We were mulling around the name. They couldn't figure out what to do. And I was approached by the production company, which was Deep River Production. And Chris called me and she said, hey, Gab, would you want to be a part of this documentary? And I'm like, absolutely. And so that hugely catapulted my career, because once we did that documentary and it released we shot it in 95, so it's listed as 1995, but it didn't release until 96 because it took us a year to get around. Yeah. It ended up being a $660,000 budget for a 1-hour documentary. Discovery Channel put it on the Discovery Channel, and it went international within the first week. As a documentary, they rate you like they rate you for school, like, a 1.0, a 2.0, a 3.0, or a 4.0. And Ted Turner said, look, I'll do a sequel of it if you guys hit a 4.0. Well, we didn't hit a 4.0, but we hit a 3.8, which is astronomically
awesome. Come on.
For and of course, it went international in the first week, so we were all over the world. I remember before we had even finished production on it, they had to fly me to New York to meet with the executive director, Sis Wilson, and I had to do my last interview for the short movie. And I was in New York, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. Another one of those defining moments when something happened, and you're like, "What? I made it!" So I'm standing on the corner, and we're getting ready to go to the subway, and what blows by us? Huge bus with Turner Broadcasting and Discovery Channel. All 4 of our photos on the side of it.
No way. So cool.
And if they were like,
jeez, yeah.
Hey, let's go back to that Biker Women series. For people maybe who didn't get a chance to see it or have never really done that type of a trip, take us on a virtual ride across country with cameras, and what was going on? Like, what was the game plan? Like, where were you guys going? Just take us into that journey, how that got planned out and where you guys went, things of that nature.
This is truly a defining moment it was a defining moment for all of us, because we shot for 26 days on that production, which is a long production for a 1-hour documentary. We had the best of the best. We had the best photographers. We had Peter Starr, who was at that time one of the top photographers for motorcycles. We had, all of these great photographers that were in there for still photography. We had Sis Wilson as the executive producer. We had Vicki Samuels as the director. Tom Beers and Betsy Beers, his wife, were on the production, And so while we were shooting it, what the intent was for us to leave California and ride across country to go to Sturgis, South Dakota for the big biker rally, which is, the biker rally in the world.
Sturgis rally, yep.
You're a biker, everybody knows what Sturgis is if you're really a biker. And so that was the preface of the movie, and they were like, well, we need a conflict. And we told them, we said, you don't need conflict.
Oh, right.
There's going to be conflict regardless. You got 4 going on a trip. I said, there's going to be times when there's going to be tears. There's going to be breakdowns. There's going to be all this. Now, mind you, here I am. I'm the only African-American woman. I'm dead set on making this trip, but I didn't have any money. I was very, very poor, Like, I had my old shovel head, and that's all I had. Right. The other girls had newer bikes. They all had brand new bikes, or at least a couple years old. I had an 82 shovel. And so they loved my bike because it was the epitome of a biker, as opposed to an stock. My bike was not stock at all,
Right.
And so they're like, oh, this is awesome. And I was like, and they're like, well, I understand you're a mechanic. I go, well, we're all, we've all worked on our bikes. Said, I don't profess to be a mechanic, but I know enough to get me by the road. I'm like, oh, we hope you have a breakdown. I go, no, don't.
Don't jinx, man. Don't jinx.
Yeah. The world.
I knew that if I broke down and couldn't get the bike running, then that would be the end of my time on film.
That's right. That's right.
So, I consulted all of my wonderful, wonderful gentlemen friends that have been kind enough to give me, input on what to do on road repairs. And I had been riding for so long. I mean, I'd been tinkering on my bike since I was 10, as you can imagine.
Right, right.
So
right.
I knew the general workings of a combustion engine, and had, the basics of what to look for when something went wrong, for a road repair. And so as we started out, of course we hit inclement weather. There were storms, there were bats, there was fog, there was cold, there was fires, you name it, we had it. Bug infestation.
Yeah.
The amount of times when we were going through certain areas, we had, like, I didn't wear a full face helmet. Half the time I actually didn't wear a helmet at all. It was just that time of year, and so I didn't wear a helmet. So I would. If I did, the only time I did wear a helmet was when it was raining, because I really didn't like it when the rain would hit my forehead.
Right.
But I'd
hurts.
my bandana and wear a big set of goggles and get through the rain that way. So we were all pretty bare bones, pretty bare bones. But there was a time actually when my bike did break down. In fact, it broke down several times. So they loved it. The production crew loved it. Then they were in there with us with the cameras, and you'll see that in the film, the documentary itself. And it was testing, because, I was scared. I didn't know whether my abilities would be able to overcome
Right,
this
of course.
I was so determined that I wasn't going to say die until, they finally called it. And as it turned out, I had multiple issues with my bike, multiple issues. But every time I was able to get it fixed with the help of Chris, because Chris and I really were the only two that really worked on our bikes. The other two girls, wonderful girls, but they really weren't wrenches. But Chris and I, because we rode Harley, regularly, you ride a Harley at that time of year.
Yeah.
Well,
What was happening? What was going on with the shovel head? What kept happening?
Well, thank you for asking, because it's such a great story. What was happening was I kept getting blow by past the ring. And so I was
Whoa.
getting oil thrown out of my breather hose all the way to my back tire. So I was literally covering my back tire in oil in the back end of the bike. And I was getting drenched, and anybody behind me was getting drenched with oil. And I had to constantly top it off. I'll finish that story in a second, because there is that story. That became the bane of my existence for the entire trip. But there were other things that happened. I ended up, one time the bike kept, like bang, bang, like not just a pop, bang, and then it would stop, and then it would start again. And I was like, what the hell? So Chris and I, at one point it stopped and I couldn't get it started. So Chris and I, there we were, I'm pulling the seat off, and we're underneath the bike, just checking it out and everything. And we're working, couldn't figure it out. And then finally, between the two of us, and this is what I loved about Chris was like an associate doctor to me, as well as a scrub nurse. She just did what was necessary, and she gave me moral support when I was in there, had my hands elbow deep in the bike or whatever. And she's like, no, Gav, we'll get it. And it will get it. I love Chris. I absolutely love Chris. She's definitely, I would have to say, had it not been for Chris, on many occasions, I probably would have been far more stressed, and I don't know whether I would have been able to overcome those things had it not been for Chris, just being my sister and being the strong person, going, come on, we got this. But after probably about an hour on the side of the road, I finally, once I pulled the whole battery out, and we're looking in the battery box, and I'm looking at the ground wire, and it looked kind of weird, and then finally I looked at it really hard, and I went, oh my God. And she goes, what? And she goes, it's a broken ground wire. And that's what it was.
Wow.
I had a ground wire that literally was broken. And what would happen is when it would make contact, then the bike would turn on. And when it would, create an open, then the bike would stop. And so fortunately, because, I talked to a lot of my mechanics before I left, there was a lot of things that I carried with me. I carried an extra ground wire. I carried 3/4 inch hose, about 1.5 feet of it in case I ruptured a hose. I carried extra all the little things, and then I carried a full toolkit. I mean, I literally was the tool box because both my saddlebag, one side of my saddlebag had, my provisions, for camping and everything else. And the other side of my saddlebag had all tools. And so, so I was able to literally get in there, replace the ground wire, get the bike put back together again. And we got back down the road. So back to that, go bypass the rig.
Yeah. Let's do it.
That became a problem for the entire trip. Because there was, I had to, once we got to Sturgis, we ended up splitting up and going back by ourselves. We didn't stay together. We went together to Sturgis, but on the way back, we rode by ourselves. So that particular problem kept happening. And I couldn't figure it out. So finally, the last straw was, I literally, when I would stop, the back end of my bike was dripping with oil. I mean, it was dangerous, so I pulled I went to a bike shop that looked like, it looked like a junkyard, but I knew that was my kind of people.
Yep. Right. That's a good sign.
I went to the mechanic and the guy that owned the shop, and I said, look, here's my situation. And he's like looking at it and going, I don't know, and he goes, look, I don't have time to work on your bike because I got these other things. He said, but you're more than welcome to use whatever tools. And I said, honestly, all I need.
That's cool.
Space to work in, and then maybe your expertise when I get into it. He's like, perfect. So I was in the corner of his shop, taking the bike apart, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. I'm sitting down, and I'm pulling off my primary cover, and I got my primary cover in my lap, and I'm looking at it, and he's looking over my shoulder, and he looks at me and he goes, oh my God. And I'm looking at the same thing he's looking at. He goes, it looks like there's sand in your primary, in the oil and everything. And I went, no. He goes, is there anybody that doesn't like you? And I'm like, no. I get along with everybody. I don't have anybody that doesn't like me, And and most people, being an African-American woman traveling alone by yourself, you're thinking, well, and I'm like, I didn't want to go there, So I was like, no, there's nobody that I know of that dislikes me enough to throw sand into my oil.
Right.
And so then sitting there, and I'm still sitting there with the primary in my lap, and I'm touching it now. I can feel the grit. I can see. Yeah. And when I touched it, it wasn't gritty. And then a light bulb went on in my head. Now I got a fast backwards. Okay, rewind. 30 years ago, all right, or 20 years ago, when I was, 10 or so, and I was sick, and I was home, and my mother took my temperature, and I dropped the thermometer on the bathroom floor, and it shattered, and all of the mercury went all over, and it was little metal balls.
Yeah.
I was like, and I went to go touch one, and my mother goes, look, and I go,
yeah,
what is it? She goes, that's mercury. Don't touch it; it'll get in your bloodstream. And that's when I realized it was mercury. And I looked at my mechanic and I said, it's mercury. He goes, mercury? And I go, yeah. And he goes, why would mercury be in your oil? And I said, I put a balance master on. And what had happened, the balance master had ruptured and leached mercury. The balance masters are sealed. It's a sealed cylinder that goes around your, clutch basket. And, it had ruptured, and so the mercury was leaching into my oil, and it would destroy my oil pumps over time because I'd already had to replace the oil pump once I got to Sturgis. Wouldn't work, and I had to replace the oil pump. What happened was mercury would get into the bottom of the oil pump, and it was too heavy to pump through it, and it would lay in the bottle, and it would just render the pump not working. So that's my favorite mechanic story. It's that's what it was. Bounced, ruptured and leached into my oil, and it was circulating through my oil. And so little micro deposits were getting into my oil pump, and it would seize the oil pump eventually.
Hey, was that a rigid you were driving? Was that a rigid frame or was it a soft cat?
At the time, it wasn't a rigid. It was a stock FFWG frame.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, that's what I've been building on for the last 10 years that's Barry Shovelhead that's got 600,000 miles on it. I pulled it apart, and my mechanic, I call him Dirty Dan. His name's Daniel Herman. I love this guy. He and I pulled it apart after I'd already rebuilt it once before, 4 times before. But anyway, I pulled it apart, and as we had it apart, we had the engine out of it. We had to rebuild the engine. And he goes, you need to cut the spring arm off of this fucking, excuse my French. I go, I really want a rigid. He goes, that's the reason why you need to do it. He goes, you've got all these soft tails. He goes, you need a rigid. And I'm like, I know, but it's my favorite bike, and I don't know if I want it. He goes, here. He goes, that's good. So I split them off a bit. I turned it into a rigid frame. We punched out the engine. I punched out the conservative 91-inch. I honed out my own cylinders and everything.
Good for you. Good for you. That's awesome.
And so now it's a 91-inch stroker, and I'll never forget one of the things that he did to me, because okay, you're just going to figure it out on your own. I'm like, and he's like, nope, so I'm trying to, after we rebuilt the engine, it's all ready to go, and I got to put it back into the frame. We're trying to put it back into the frame. I'm like, what the hell? And he's like, nope, you got to figure it out. You got to figure it out yourself. I worked on that like an hour and a half, and finally I went, I know what it is. And he goes, what is it? And I go, it's the stroker plate.
They're taller.
Frame because it was taller, and and so couldn't click. So we had to grind the frame and then reinforce it, because we didn't want to compromise the frame in any way. I had to grind the frame to allow for space to get the engine back into the frame. And once we did that, I was able to get the engine back into the frame. And now we have a rolling chassis, and we're working on finalizing the mounting for my tanks now, because everything's different. Everything's different. I put a new oil tank on it, like the barrel oil tank on it. And now it's a 91-inch rigid frame chopper bobber.
Oh man, that's gotta be exciting. No, I mean, shit, you've had this bike for so long, and the fact that now you're rebuilding it back, that's killer, man. That is so awesome.
Thank you so much. It's been a labor of love. I mean, because it's taken forever.
It is. It is what it is. Who cares?
I'm doing all these things. I mean, I'm acting when I can. I'm singing when I can. I'm working all the time.
Yeah.
And my mechanic's like, you need to spend more time. I'm like, look, everybody's pulling me every direction, okay? I have a 98-year-old father that I'm taking care of. I mean, it's
Wow.
It's a lot, I mean, and then, doing productions here and there, with the Leadus production, with the, Polaris production, with the Indian production. I mean, it's a lot. And so every week I'm working with my mechanic with this bike. And so now we've finally got a rolling chassis, the engine's back in the frame, and we're getting ready. We've got it partially wired. We've got the front end on it. We've got the rear end on it. What we're trying to do now is we had to modify the mount for the tank, my gas tank, because I got a fat bob, gas tank. So we're modifying that, and we're going to have to do some TIG welding to put that together. And then we're sending it off to the powder coater to get that done. And then we'll start working on and then the finalize.
Do you have a time frame where you guys are targeting to get it done by?
Honey, I was hoping to have it done by Chopper Fest, but I didn't make it, and it will definitely be done by hook or by crook for Sturgis. I am taking that bike, not riding it to Sturgis, because
bringing it up there. And man, nobody wants to ride a rigid at this point in your life, man. It's fun. It's fun when you're 20s and 30s, but not now, man.
Well, here's what I did. You're gonna love this. Here's what I did. I mean, and honestly, I would, but I've got so many shows in the work on the way that I can't make my time frame. Normally I ride there and back, and I usually end up putting about 8,000 miles on my bike because I do all these back roads and all these excursions and everything else. And I don't have a problem with riding a rigid, even though I'm as old as I am. However, I know that I don't want to wreck not only my kidneys, but my back and hips, because I have some issues with those. So what I did is I called up TC Brothers. I'm like, God, here's what my situation is. And they're like, we got you. So they sent over, God bless them, they sent over the dual air shock that go underneath my seat.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
the compression.
Nice.
Yep.
Correct. So I've got that. So that's better than being on a total.
It gives you a little leeway on the bumps, at least. That helps.
Yeah, at least I'm not
going to hurt, but just a little bit less.
A little bit less. Like teeth out of your head, I mean, because I've get a couple of bumps on that, on a rigid, because I've ridden plenty of ridges, and they're a ball of fun. I mean, because I love doing quarter mile with them. But boy, if you hit a pothole,
if you're going just local cruising, I had a Sucker Punch Sally rigid frame little Springer bobber, and we decided to take it up to Georgia, and South Carolina. And I was like, at the time I'm like in my early 30s, so it was no big deal. But I'll tell you what, man, right now at 53, I would never do that again. I'm not driving 450 miles, 500 miles on a freaking rigid frame. Never again.
Definitely. Well, I mean, honestly, you have to be, I mean, like if I did decide, like, let's say they had some sort of an endurance run, I would definitely try it, even at my age. But I can tell you this, before I did that, I would be in training, literal training
Mhm.
to make sure that my body can do
take
it. And I've prided myself at 67 to be in good shape and take good care of my body, but there's only so much you can put your body through until it's
Absolutely.
so would I try it? Absolutely. Like I've wanted to do the cannonball run, but I have to have a bike that is, I think, 1920s or earlier. So I'm trying to find somebody that would sponsor me for that, because I have always wanted to do the cannonball run, but I've never had the time. And now that I'm getting to retire from teaching, that will give me the time, and I can actually put go full tilt boogie and really, really start trying to find sponsorships, or somebody that would sponsor me with an older bike and sponsor the trip and then I'll go into training and probably but there's a lot of older guys, especially, and even Chris herself has done it. Chris and I are the same age. So, this is something that I've wanted to do. And Chris has done it. I mean, she does it every year, and she's the same age I am. So I'm like, I can do this. I've also wanted to do the whole A run. So and I'll probably end up, I don't think they have the Hoka.
Yeah, you need a bagger for that thing, man. God,
oh yeah,
that's a hell of a run.
Exactly. Well, and honestly, I had planned to do that run, but then they stopped doing it. But I talked to Wingmen of the Road, and they were kind enough to send over one of their wingmen, in the tent that you can pitch up right, because that's what you do when you're doing an endurance run. You're literally sleeping on the side of the road, which I've done a few times. Didn't like to, or didn't want to have to, but have had to when you can't get a room, or the campgrounds are too full, and you end up like on the outskirts of a campground, on an adventure. I've had to do that a few times, which I don't like doing, especially being a female. But they don't really know you're female until you open your mouth. And most of the time when I travel, I don't advertise the fact that I'm a female, and most people think I'm a dude, until I stop for gas, and then they speak to me. And I've had really great luck with that. The fact that I have traveled so much by myself, and I have so many gentlemen that'll say, well, don't you pack? And I'm like, okay, I'm an African-American woman. You think I'm going to pack a gun going across state line? No. I don't want to end up in jail, because I brought a loaded gun across state line. I just haven't done that. So I've always just gone with me and a good buck knife and a couple of other little secret weapons that I had, and just go, as best I can. And somebody, okay, but you're all alone. I go, well, you know what? I go, I'm never really all alone, because I really have great conversations with God, and then I'm always people along the way.
People, right? I mean, this is the thing that, the difference between Hollywood and real life, right? I mean, most of the road trips you've done, the people you run across, whether if they're riding and they see you at the same place, or most people are really pretty gracious to bikers. I mean, they really are, man. Everybody's always helpful. Everybody will always try to help in any which way they can. If you run into, I mean, I've done some monster trips in my day, and just always pulling up to places. People are always cool, man. That's what I love about our community is, you got your 1% in any genre, but I mean, for the most part, everybody's out to help somebody. Nobody wants to see anybody hurt. Nobody wants to see anybody get lost. Nobody wants to see anybody stranded. That's what I love about the motorcycle world, man. We really are one gang for sure.
No, it's very true. And this is the thing that I love about our community as well, because I mean, that I had to do a podcast with a couple of guys that I absolutely love. And I'm so sorry, I can't think of the name of the podcast right now. I think it's, Forever Two Wheels. Great guy. And it was so funny because they're like, we'd love for you to do a podcast. I'm like, okay. And they go, well, here's the name of the podcast. I was like, okay. And it was right in the middle of when everybody was in such a frenzy, you know, and our political climate was so nutty. And they're like, it's about bikers and racism, the difficult discussion. And I was like, oh,
Boy.
oh boy. You know, so, but it turned out really well simply because, you know, honestly, what you said is very, very true. Our community is very different in that sense. I mean, obviously there's going to be that 1% or
Always.
crazy, but literally every trip that I have done, except for one trip at Sturgis and one particular individual, I have never, ever been treated badly or with.
Awesome.
Everybody has been so gracious and so kind to me in the most remote
That's
places
right.
you could possibly imagine. I mean, I remember one time when I broke down in the middle of nowhere in Utah, and these guys came up on me and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you know, you broke down. What can we do to help?" And I'm like, you know, I couldn't even get signal. And I said, you know, I need somebody to call AAA for me. And they go, no, look, we'll help you. We'll get you to the nearest town, which was like another 35 miles from where I was at. So they got me to a little teeny tiny town,
Wow.
literally in the middle of nowhere that had maybe 50
Right.
people, you know.
Right.
But once I got there, then, you know, there was no hotel, there was no motel, you know, and I thought, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to be pitching my tent, you know, for the night until I can make a phone call to have a tow truck come out and give. And these people, when they realized that I had nowhere to go, people out of nowhere, he said, oh, no, you're going to come to our house. They fed me, they housed me, they kept
Right.
me over.
Wow.
They made sure my bike was safe.
Yeah.
They made sure I was safe. And then the next morning, honestly, you would have thought I was Dorothy and landed in the middle of Oz. And when I
Good
was
for
leaving,
you.
the entire town came out and they were waving to me like I was Dorothy taking off on
Wow.
one.
Wow.
It was wonderful.
Hey, Gavin, before Ben goes to the next question, I just want to I love what you said with the, you know, the political and the new in all reality, right? I mean, we believe in God, you know, most people believe in God. We all care about each other when it really comes down to it. In all reality, the only people that really separate society is government and media, right? And why?
Exactly
Because
right.
right. So there is when we look at each other, we don't look at color, man. We look at the interests, who we are, you're a biker. I mean, that to me, I don't give a shit what color I am. That's cool, man. I mean, you're just a cool person. So
Yeah.
and the media, the politics, this is how they survive, man. They just keep putting that narrative out there that everybody hates somebody because of their color and it drives me freaking crazy. It really does, because that's not how we feel.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, in that podcast, you know, 'cause one lady said, "Oh, well, that's going to really be a shit show," and I was like, "No, it's going to be fine," you know, because I'm not the type of person to get into some argument. I'm just not, you know. I'm going to listen. I will sit down with anyone. I will sit down with what some people would consider the most racist person ever. I would sit down and have that conversation because those conversations need to be had. They need to be had because we all have ground. So what I said was this. I said, look, you're dealing with what you were talking about, you know, with media and politics. And I said, and here's the situation. You've got 5% of extremists on this side. You've got 5% of extremists on the other side. And I said, and then you've got another 5% of people that are kind of extreme, and then another 5% of people that are kind of extreme. And I said, and then you've got the 80% of us in the middle watching these two extremes fight with each other, because that's where all the attention goes, because they're the loud ones.
Yes.
80% are
Hallelujah,
going,
man.
okay.
And
you know,
those 10 here and 10 here are the 1% financially that make all the decisions, who pay for these imbeciles to get into office. So, I mean, this is how it works. And then the working people like us who don't hate each other. We love each other. We'll help each other. We don't care. As long as you're a cool person, we're different.
And see,
they are the ones who are
patriotic.
sending the narrative to tell us how we need to feel and how we need to think about each other.
Exactly.
Bro, awesome, girl. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, because the rest of us, that's where the patriotism is in that 80%.
That's right. That's right.
The bottom line is this. We all know, all of all of us, 100% of us in this country, if we were invaded by a foreign entity, it's not going to matter. What's going to matter is that, are you American or not? You know,
That's
are
right.
you born in this country or not? Because that's when it's going to be the defining factor. We're
Yep.
all going to fight for this country. We all love this country. Somebody said to me one time, they said, well, you know, since you're African American, you know, would you want to move to a different country? I said, you know, honestly, I said, there is no other country that has supported me, even with all of our craziness and prejudice and everything else. There is no other country that has supported me as much as this one has. Now, have I been to Germany? Have I been to Italy? No, I'm getting ready to go to Italy in a couple of weeks, or well, in a month. For the first time, I've never been out of the country. I've never been able to afford it, but I have a lovely friend, another female. That's why I said females have been the ones that have lifted me up. Another female that said, look, I got you. She's a flight attendant. She said, look, I got you. I'll put you on my buddy pass. I'll take care of you once you get to Italy. I'll drive you
Nice.
to meet all my friends and everything. So I'm going to Italy for the first time in my life, which has been something
Awesome.
that I do my entire life. So I'll be going there as a 67-year-old African-American woman that's a biker, music,
Sweet.
and she has inside connections to all of her bikers and musicians there. You know, so I'm thrilled. But the bottom line is honestly, I said, I am so glad that I am in this country because yes, there have been trials and tribulations because I'm an African American. Okay. But I've gotten through it. It's not been easy. Could I have gotten farther had the color of my skin been different? Perhaps. But the bottom line is I had great parents that raised me to never say die, be kind, be open-minded, educate yourself, you know, because all of these things are factors that have gotten me to the level that I'm at right now. And I'm going
Right.
to continue
Right.
to push that envelope with the hope that I can continue to increase the size of my platform and be able to talk about these issues that are very, very deep in our society. You know, I mean, right now,
Yeah.
talking about women's rights and they're being compromised. And, you know, and that's not okay because here I am, an African American female who has fought for these rights. Now we're losing them. So for us, it's very scary time for us, you
Yeah.
know?
It's another interesting point with racism. I've always seen it as there's two main factors that play a role in it, and it's difference. Difference is based in age typically, but there's innocence, right? So none of us are born racist. You don't see racism in kindergarten.
Right.
I mean, unless some nasty parents got to that kid early on. And then as you go through life and you're older, for people who gain these poor experiences through life and they decide that they're going to go down that racism road, it becomes based in ignorance for
And
these people.
fear. I said, because the bottom line,
And fear. Yeah.
talking about those two polarizations, you know, the 10%, the 10%, it's based in fear. And that's the real crime. It's all fear mongering. It's the fear of, oh, well, they're going to come and invade your home and, or they're going to take away your power. You've got people
Right.
that have had power for so long that are afraid of losing it. And you've got people that have never had the power that are afraid of never getting it. So, you know,
Yeah.
got
And they're the real they who we got to worry about.
exactly, you know, and I said, and I used this example, okay. One of the, it was my ex, you know, one of the women that was a lovely human being that I, you know, I'm no longer with her. I'm with my wife now. But her father was extremely prejudiced, a racist, the type of guy that
Wow.
literally would chase a black kid off of the porch if he was playing with his
Jesus.
kids. I mean,
Right. Jeez.
was her father. Well, here's what happened. I got to tell you the story because it's a wonderful story.
Great.
He
Yeah.
accepted me because I was dating his daughter, which was hard because, you know, the whole lesbian thing. And now I'm African American.
Uh-huh.
But he accepted into this family, you know, begrudgingly. But he and his brother were talking and I overheard them talking, you know, and I'm like, Gail, what's going on? And he's like, well, you know, I'm trying to get my CB tower up on my antenna tower, which is 65 feet tall. And my brother's afraid to do it because he's afraid of height and I'm not very good and I'm afraid of height. And we've never really climbed a tower. And I said, guys, I said, I was a cable splicer and a telephone installer for 3 years, you know, for the telephone company. And I climbed poles all the time. I got my gap. I still got my belt. I'll put it up for you. He goes, you do this for me? I'm like, I put that thing, I climbed up there, put the thing up, you know, mounted it the whole 9 yards, came back down. I go, there you go. That man loved me from that point forward. Do you know he would Never even hugged his own daughters.
What?
They're like, he loved me.
That's amazing.
Loved me.
Oh my gosh.
My 22 rifle with a soap on it when I left Ohio because I couldn't transport it on the flight, you know? And so I said, Gail, I want you to have this. So I gave him my 22, which he loved because he would go squirrel hunting with it.
Right.
For hunting. Yeah. Nice.
He loved me. And we became great friends after that, you know? I mean, but it was based, he was ignorant he didn't have any insight. He didn't have any effort.
Yeah.
And all he knew was what he thought growing up, and we were dogs, or we were less than, or we were ignorant, or we would steal from, you know, I mean, and all of that is fear mongering. And unfortunately, this is what gives rise to these sort of things. And it worked both ways. I mean, there's African American people that are like, oh, you're marrying a white guy, or you're marrying a white girl, or you know what? Oh, I think, you know, I've been called a sellout how many times, and it's like, I got called a sellout until, you're gonna love this, until I started dreadlocking my hair. I let my hair go down instead of processing it and all that, you know?
Right.
That's when all of the African American females that used to pick on me regularly, you know, they said, well, you're a sellout. Well, you're just trying to be white because of the way you speak. I'm like, look, I'm just educated. I've educated myself.
I can't stand that.
You know, I mean, I used to get picked on more by African American females than anyone, you know? And it was hard because, you know, and it took me a long time to finally find African American female that would befriend me, because the minute I opened my consider me the enemy, and it's like, this sucks.
I love what you said. I love what you said, or the education part, and going back to the fearmonger of your ex's dad. That I think that is a major problem where in our society here, and I'm just going to talk for the States. I know all over the world is prejudice. I mean, I'm not, but it's the fact that people don't leave their box, right? So they stay in their box like a chicken, you know? So they walk around to all four corners. They don't know what's in that building. They don't know what's in that building. And so that's all they know. And I think if people traveled more, talk to people, don't walk with your head down, walk with your head up, say hello, good morning. How much of a different world this would be, instead of everybody just walking around scared shit, watching Instagram or X, showing some violent video that they're got a million views. Fucking view somebody in the face and say hello and good morning. Don't worry about that stuff. You know, sorry for my language.
No, I'm the same way. I was so funny because I was raised to never curse. My parents do not curse. In fact, the first time I ever heard anything come out of my father's mouth was when he was just telling me a story just recently. He's 98, okay? And he actually said the expletives that were the real things that were being said about a story when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And he looked over, he goes, excuse my language. I go, Daddy, no, I'm just glad you're calling it what it is. He goes, no, I just don't want to curse in front of you. You know, and it was hilarious because, you know, because I'm a biker, because I'm surrounded but I'm also a teacher, so I can't,
of course,
you know, I have to really put the wraps on it. So I teach my kids, I'm like, you know what? I understand the cursing thing. I get it. I curse too. I said, but there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
That was
no question.
And you really need to put a cap because you got to be able to control it, because if you're someplace and something falls on your toe and it really hurts badly and your grandmother's standing there, you don't want to scream out the bomb.
Right.
Good.
So they get it. But yeah, you know, I mean,
a
real interesting dynamic that we deal with, you know, but I've watched how, I don't want to take all the credit on this, but I've watched how my upbringing with people that have been prejudiced, you know, with my parents teaching me kindness and teaching me how to diffuse that fear, because that's all it is. And my mother especially was the one that said, I remember the first time I was called a nigger and I came home crying. And my mother said, you know, you have to forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. It was very Christ-like, if you can imagine. They do not know what they're doing. And she says they're dealing with fear and ignorance because of what they've learned. And she says the only way that you can combat that is by giving them insight to who you are. And she says they don't know you personally. They don't know who you are.
That's beautiful.
Once they know you, everything will change. And because of that, I have spent my entire life navigating people that I can see it in their faces. Sometimes I'll talk to people on the phone, and then when they see me in person, they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize you were black." And then they catch themselves, and I'm like,
Really?
Stop themselves.
God.
Yeah.
In,
Well, you
in
don't-
today's
you don't
day and
sound
age,
black.
man.
"Well, no," they'll say, "Well, you don't sound black." I'm like, "That mean."
Right. I mean,
Exactly.
And then we laugh, but then I make it comedic because that's the only, as a teacher, as an instructor, I have learned over years that the only way to really combat that is to diffuse the fear by comedy. And I've been successful with that. It's a
Good.
lot of work, it's
Yeah.
exhausting, but I've been successful with that. I want to share another story with you guys. That's one of my favorite stories. When I was living,
Please.
there was a particular bar that I wanted to go to. I don't frequent bars because I'm not really much of a drinker. I drink like a bird, if I drink at all. And it was a biker bar, and there were always Harleys parked out in front of it. And at the time, I still had my 750 Honda, so I wasn't a Harley rider. And I'd had that bike for 17 years, and I had it all tricked out like a Harley. It was custom painted and everything, but it wasn't a Harley; it was a Honda. And so all my friends, "Oh, you can't go into that bar. It's a biker bar, and they'll burn your bike, and oh no, and they don't like black people, and the whole thing." But it would look fun, I'm like, I want to go to this bar. I want to go to this bar. I just want to go to play pool and just meet some people and just have conversation about bikes. And they're like, "No, don't go in." Finally got my courage, went there with my Honda, parked in between the Harleys, and walked in. And, "Hey, it felt like a happy puppy.
Huh.
Walk in,
right,
and
of course. Should be.
Well, I was a pool player, a good pool player. I said WCSC champion for 4 years.
Nice.
So I went in
Eh?
and started playing pool.
Every sport.
Right.
You weren't joking.
Or I'm
Jeez.
not. So I go in and start playing pool. I win the table. So now I'm dominating the table, and I'm focused on the pool game. Now it's cold out, but it's not snowing. Okay. It's cold, like 35, 36 degrees, but it's not snowing and it's dry. All right. Well, they kept opening the door, and I'd go over, I'd shut the door, and I'd go right back to my pool game. And this happened like 3 or 4 times throughout the time that I had won the table, because I'm playing and playing and playing and playing. And finally, I go over like for the 5th or 6th time, and I not slam it, but I shut the door. I'm like, "You guys, it's cold in here. Leave the door shut." Well, when I closed it, I saw on the back of it, they had a full-size picture of the silhouette of a black man with a fro on a target running. And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at them, and they're looking at me, and I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at them, and they're looking at me. And finally, I looked at it again, and I looked back at the whole bar. I mean, because the whole bar, everything stopped.
Right.
Jeez.
Stopped. And I'm like, okay. And I look at it again, and I said, I am so glad I am not a black man with a fro. The whole place fell out.
Nice.
Oh my
People are
gosh.
laughing. On
That's
the
right.
floor.
Winning with
Gee.
kindness. Yep.
And the next day I went in there, the poster was gone.
Good.
It was gone.
Yes.
That bar became my bar. So the next time I went in there, this was weeks later, and I was always welcome. "Yeah, hey, Gavin, how you doing? Hi, blower, I mean,
Nice.
like everybody knew it was like Cheers. Everybody knew my name.
Right. And then,
Yeah.
Knew what I did. Everybody knew I rode a Honda because I didn't have my first Harley yet. Speaking of which, I got my first Harley while I was going to that bar.
Yeah,
All
cool.
the help of the friends that were there that had Harleys, and they told me what to look for, and that's how I got my shovelhead.
That's
Nice.
good.
Anyway,
Jackpot.
so where was I going with this story? It's lost my train of thought.
That turned into your bar.
Yeah. Oh, it turned into my bar. So 2 months later, I go in there, and I mean, I'm a biker, and honestly, I was young then, and I would always ride with a tank top, no bra. I mean, I'm an emancipated woman, and I'm just
Right.
gonna put it as politely as I
We do the same
can.
thing.
They're flying, but they're just always flying. And so I walk in, and this guy comes from inside of the bar, comes right up to me. I thought he was going to say hi to me. And he literally grabs my nipple. All right. And
Wow.
literally, he's holding onto my nipple, twisting my nipple. And I'm like, shocked that he's like, I'm
Yeah.
like spotlighting me, and I'm like in shock. And I'm just standing there kind of like processing, like, oh my gosh, this guy, he's got his hand on my breast. Like, I mean, literally,
Gosh.
And so
What in
all
the
I could
world?
do, I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna fight fire with fire. So I opened up my hand. Now, mind you, yeah, okay. So my fingers
Yeah.
are long and narrow, and my
Can
grip is
palm
very
a
strong. I've been
basketball.
riding a motorcycle forever, and I'm an athlete, so I've been playing baseball. I got quite a grip. It's my
Right,
top
right.
like what my
Throttle
black
it.
between his leg, grabbed a handful of his stuff.
Right.
Balls,
Uh-huh.
I
Bet he
squeezed
let
as
go
hard as I
quick.
could, and all of a sudden he goes, "Whoop," and I'm holding on to him, and he's holding on to me, and I said, "When you let go of my breath,
Oh.
I will let go of your ball." And
Gee.
I'm squeezing harder, and he finally let go, and I let go, and he fell to the floor. And I said, "Thank you very much."
Holy
Stepped over
cow.
and walked into the bar, and everybody's
Oh,
like
What?
shocked that even happened. Well, I didn't think anything of it. I thought, okay, I took care of my business. Nobody needed to rescue me. I can rescue myself. I didn't think I went to the pool table,
Yeah.
played pool, he drank, whatever. After I left, unbeknownst to me, because I came back like a week later, and they said, my friend said, we wiped that guy up at the bar. And I said, "Excuse me?" And they go, "That guy." I go, "What guy?" Because always,
Yeah.
even as far as I was concerned, I'm like, it's all. And they go, "No, we wiped him up with the bar." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And they said,
Right.
"Well, we
Right.
literally, when he got really, really drunk, we literally wiped him on the floor and threw it back." Like, what?
Yeah,
And we all,
that's crazy.
Wow.
but yeah, because it became my bar.
Uh,
Oh, it's funny.
Yeah.
There I am, the only African American
That is bizarre.
that's bar, but no, I mean, and obviously when I go to, first time I'd ever ridden to Sturgis was in 1990. So even though it seemed like the 90s were so progressive, I was the only African American person that I saw there I was there for 2 weeks. I was there for bike week and then a week after.
Wow.
I never saw another black person the entire time I was there.
Really?
The entire time.
It's creepy.
It's certainly very few women riding. I saw maybe 2 or 3 women to row. Now over the years, I've watched this amazing progression with obviously women on motorcycles. There's still very few African American people that you'll see there, but you'll see, for every 5 to 10 men, you'll see at least 1 or 2 female bikers, which is astronomical in my opinion. Because when I started going
Different.
there for the first 5 years, I've been going to Sturgis, and I go every year. I saw maybe 5 women that rode, 5 to 6
Wow.
women.
Wow.
A lot of that came about from my promoting with Chris Summer Simmons with the magazine, being on the cover of her magazine, and also Courtney's magazine, and just talking to the women that would come, and then we get more women, and we get more women, and we get more women, and pretty soon. Now, I mean, when I look back on it, 1990 has been well over 30 years ago now. And even though it seemed
Wow.
like just yesterday, but all of the women that we were promoting then were just babies. Well, those babies have had babies now. Their babies are right. And their babies are the ones that I'm
Yeah.
connecting with on Instagram now, which is really amazing.
That's wild.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just an amazing transition. I mean, and remember when I told you, I said, because of social media, that was how I was able to bridge the age gap, because I was out there as a woman that was past her 50s, and it had this background of women that have come up after me, and now I've been in the motorcycle community, but I really didn't have a lot of, I have old roots because I've been going to Sturgis for so many years. And of course, all the OEMs and all the people that I've met through that. So I have all the old school roots from years ago, like way back in the 80s, and all of my
Yeah.
friends are now elderly, like I am elderly, but my wife was the one that got me on Facebook. And then when I got onto Instagram, that's when everything changed. Once I got onto Instagram,
Right.
all the kids started going, "Oh my God." And then they started following me. And then before I knew it, I
Huh.
this huge following. And then
Hey,
my
Gevin,
older
I
friend,
wanted to ask you real quick about your Quest project, the MT Quest project that you started. That's been pretty amazing. Can you kind of take the listeners and the viewers into how that got started and the progression of what you had to do to build it and where it is now?
Thank you
His
so
name's
much for
familiar.
actually, I founded that with my one of my best friends. She's my twin sister, and that's Tana Roller. That was not my brainchild. Although I've been doing all of this for so long, I had not been successful of how to make it work so that we could actually make a career of it. And Tana, that's where Tana's brain comes in. And she's worked in the industry for many, many years. And Tana approached me because of my notoriety and my background and knowing that I had been in the industry for so many years. And she said, look, I want to start this thing, and I want to call it a quest called Tribe, which is a play on A Tribe Called Quest.
Of course.
Tribe
Yep.
Called
Yep.
Quest. Yeah.
We're all like one gang, like what you're talking about.
Right.
We're all
That's right.
community motorcyclists. And she said, I think that we can probably make this work so that we can make a career at it. And I was like, you know what? I'm all in. Now, don't get me wrong. I've had this happen many times before, and I had some negative happenings happen, and I was a little gun shy. But, Tana is absolutely charming. I absolutely love this woman. She is smart. She's beautiful. She's savvy. She knows how to pull it together. And I mean, there are things that we've been learning together, so to speak, because both of us were kind of going through this endeavor to figure out how can we make this work so that we can actually make a career out of it that would generate revenue. And we haven't been as successful as we'd like, but Tana has had cancer ever since I've known her. So she's had cancer for 7 years. So her health has gone up and down. But that being said, she's a freaking rock star, and she has ridden cross country with me more than anyone else has. And she is the only one that I know that has put up with so much inclement weather. And, we've been in mudslides, we've been in downfalls, we've been in fires, we've been in tornadoes, we've been in, you name it. The two of us have been through it. Now, I had been through many of that alone, but no one had ever really stuck with me long enough to continue going through it, except for Tana. So
Right.
creation of Quest was born. And MT means Motorcycle Tribe.
Very cool. Thank you for answering that. Wish you guys success with that. I think that's on its way to being something amazing.
We're working it. We're trying to either make a television show or a series of some sort. We're working it. We've been working it for a long time.
Do you have backers? Do you have backers right now that
Well,
can help
that's
you with the filming and all that stuff?
Yes, we do.
Cool.
They're small backers, no major networks at this time. So, because I've got 3 different production companies that have shown interest, but it comes down to time. And then of course, for Tana's health, because we had to actually stop everything for a while there because Tana took a turn for the worst, and she's a holistic person. So she refused to do chemo.
Good for her.
And we ended up having to stop and raise funds to send her to a holistic healing session. Mexico. When I need to find the name. I'm so sorry, I don't know the name of it, but I'll find it.
Email us that information and we'll put it on the notes section, okay?
I would
when you
love
do
that.
come up with it.
Yeah, because
anything we can do to help, we'll do. So
thank you, because we're still taking donations because Tana is still battling cancer. But honestly, she's the picture of health. You'd never know that she was going through pain. You would never know that she had cancer. You would never know a lot of things. But I'm telling you, if it weren't for her and many of the other women that collectively we brought together for Quest, I would not have the health that I have because, I've had shingles a while back. They taught me how to get through that. I've changed my diet. I've changed I just changed everything, what I put in my system. I follow what they do because one of our other girls, we call her corporate, Kim Countryman, she does not have cancer, but she had cancer when she was 17 years old and had a liver transplant. So she's a transplant survivor. And so, so our crew is we call ourselves bikers with juice.
That's cool. It's a good name. I like that. That's nice.
So yeah.
Gavin, I'm curious about your opinion on the current motorcycle industry, some things that you like, some things that make you shake your head, whether it's bike specific or trends or what.
It's so funny because, like I said, I've been doing this for so long. I mean, my persona has really not changed much. except for maybe evolved, like, now I have dreadlocks instead of, like processed hair, if you will, my own hair processed or dreadlocks
Me
now.
too. Me too.
Yeah,
I knew
right.
we
Yeah,
looked
that'd
similar,
be
so
fly away hair, my friend. It's all flown away.
it landed
Uh,
right
Fly
here.
away.
It landed
yeah,
right
there
here.
you
I
go.
glued
There
it.
you go. Right. Honestly, I've watched this one. Well, the progression that I absolutely love is the fact that I'm seeing more women in the industry, and the fact that because of there are more women in the industry, there's more magazines, there's more communities oriented toward women because of the numbers of women, which is about 25% of the motorcycle community now.
Which is
The thing
awesome.
that I love about our community is the fact that now there are, for example, like I've got a wind and throttle hat on and a wind and throttle shirt on. As a matter of fact, wind and throttle is one of the top, uh, uh, one of the top businesses that create uh, protective motorcycle clothing for women. It's not only rugged, but it looks feminine. I mean, I've been half of my life wearing small motorcycle clothes, which make me look like a small man.
Right.
There is nothing more wonderful than having a woman design clothes for you that has
Mhm.
the same ruggedness and protection that men's clothes have for motorcycling. Because
Yeah.
it's never been that way. Before I get this little thin, motorcycle jacket that's all cute that, if I go down in it, it's going to rip up the minute I
Yeah,
hit the
man.
asphalt.
Yeah.
That's cute, but not cute.
Right.
But not cute.
Hey, as we say, ride for the slide, not dress for the slide, not for the ride.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we promote that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been guilty. And when I was younger, I didn't wear a helmet. I wore a
Course.
tank top and a pair of jeans. That's all I would wear. No helmet, tank top, pair of jeans. Have I been down plenty of times? Absolutely. Have I got a
You
lot of
heard.
road rage? Oh, yes. Have I hit my head? Fortunately not. Fortunately, I got
Nice.
enough
Knock
to
on
start
wood.
wearing a lid bucket. I mean,
Yeah.
a brain bucket, as they call it. I mean, uh, it is definitely far smarter. There's really no arguing
Mhm.
that.
For sure.
So that progression I welcome. Now, one of the things that let me think of the things that I don't welcome. Really, I mean, I'm happy that they allow us here in California to split lane. However, because of the fact that we're going in between, or lane sharing is what they call it here. They don't call it lane splitting. They call it lane sharing. Because they allow us to lane share. But if there is an accident involving a motorcycle, we are at fault because we're
Right.
lane sharing, even if it's the fault of the car. So with that in mind, I wish it were not I wish that were not the case. But that being said, I see a lot of people that do a lot of really reckless things, so I get it.
Yeah.
But we're definitely on the short end of the stick when it comes to that. In California, I would say that you are probably, even though we have all this traffic, I would say that you're probably safer in California riding a motorcycle, even though we have a large population, because our population has been educated on the fact that we are lane sharing, and they
Right.
Yeah.
are motorcyclists. And wow, confetti! Woohoo! Glad that our motorcycle community and those that do not ride motorcycles are somewhat educated by, sometimes we have signs that'll digitally say, please watch out for motorcycles, especially if there's an
Right.
event. So that's a wonderful thing. Now, as far as evolving the motorcycle community, I am happy to know that we are evolving with the education as well, because it is important that we educate our riders. It is important that we educate them to the fact that you are invisible to a person that is driving a car. One, they don't care about you because they don't see you. You have to drive like you're invisible. And because we have CHP officers that are now educating us to that fact, and we have other communities like Quest, a Quest called Pride, educating other women. We have droves of women that come to ride with us so that we can educate them as to how to survive in this type of climate, and a climate being, so many cars that are now driving and texting.
Themselves. Yeah, because those electric cars don't they don't see motorcycles. That's
No.
one of so that's scary, especially in California, because they're pushing that electric car narrative up the wazoo of everybody there. So that's going to be a little scary.
It's very
Hey,
scary. Well, is the whole people. I've been splitting lanes and I look down in somebody's car and I can see that they are not even looking at the road. They're
No.
texting.
Right.
So
Right.
hurry. Go ahead.
That
I'm
scares
sorry.
the hell out. Hey, listen, I was going to say before we get to the speed round questions, tell the audience where they can find you. Like I said, we're also going to link this into the notes of the podcast, but where are you on social media, websites, anything you want them to know how they can help in with the support, any kind of funding or anything that you're looking to do at this moment in time?
Thank you. I appreciate that. The best way if you were going to, contact me is probably through my website, which is www.gevinfax.com. So you just put Gevin at gevinfax.com. That would be the best way. It's spelled Gevin, not G.
VIN. Yep.
Gavin. My name is Gevin,
Right.
like
Gevin.
G, pronouncing it like heaven with a G, but it's spelled like heaven with a G, so that people get it right.
Got it.
You could, if you wanted to know more about, everything that is out there about me, I would say just Google Gevin Fax, which is Gevin Fax, like the machine. And just Google me. You can find me that way. You can also find me on social media. I am called Sapa Sioux. That's S as in Sam, A, P as in Peter, A, Sioux, like the Sioux Indian. There are two up there right now that say Sapa Sioux. One is Sapa.Sioux. Don't go to that one. That's actually a private one that I have that I'm getting ready to make private. My main page is Sapa Sioux, which is SAPASIOUX. I also have my leather company, which is called Gavintage 57 or Gavintage. That is also on Instagram. That's GEVINTAGE 57.
And what is Gavin? Tell us a quick. What is Gavintage 57?
Well, honestly, I started making my own. I call them power band bracelets because I got tired of buying stuff that would break. I'm a very rugged woman. I love to skinny dip. I love to work on my bike quite often. I won't take my jewelry off. So I need stuff that some people are like, well, that's a man's. It's like, well, it's not. It's a woman. So it's a woman's thing now. It's just heavy. I need like a chain that's not going to break because I'm in rugged stuff. I might be ziplining. I might be sky. I might be working on my bike. I might be jumping into a pond or a lake or a hot spring. I'm covered in oil, gasoline. I need stuff that's rugged. So I started making my own jewelry line that I call Vintage Bling, and I started calling it Gavintage. So that's my brand, is Gavintage 57.
That's awesome.
So I started making I got one on right now, my bracelets that I make with old pawn jewelry that's broken or whatever. And I started making bracelets with silver pieces on it. And it's, leather band that are like
that's nice.
It's
cool.
Yeah, that's killer, man. That's beautiful.
And repurposed leather because I'm a fanatic about I don't want to kill a bunch of animals, so I take everybody else's, I turn it into everybody else's treasure, and I call it power bands because I want people to feel, it took me a long time to start selling them because I didn't want to give up my part of my soul. I felt like I was giving my soul or selling a part of my soul because every time I made something, I didn't want to give it away. And somebody said, well, you have to put on it, so it was hard, but I felt like, you know what, you're getting a piece of me. This is a piece of who I am. I want to enjoy it. I want you to feel empowered by it. I want you to feel strong. I want you to, biggest thing I want you to remember is whatever you do, lead with kindness, lead with kindness.
Awesome.
That's cool.
All right. So you ready? You ready for the big speed round?
Thanks, Gevin.
Sure. Let's do it.
Buckle up. Ben will lead it. So I'll put 2 minutes on the clock.
Right.
Here we go.
All right. First question. What is the best motorcycle you've owned or ridden?
Wow. A lot of one. I I
You
can't.
got 5 seconds for each question. Go, go, go.
Best thing. I love my Indian, but I love my Harley for different reasons. I love them both. I ride my Indian probably more so than the Harley because there's more to it. Then I've got all the bells and whistles on my Indian, and I don't have all the bells and whistles on my Road King. But I love both.
All right.
That's funny too, knowing your dad rode on a Harley and on an Indian. It's kind of full circle. That's cool. If your motorcycle could talk, what would it say about you?
Man, if my motorcycle would talk, it would say, I have got some serious story. A lot of
Awesome,
stuff.
man. All right. Good one. Good one.
All right, next question. Best place you've ever ridden and why?
I would say Sturgis, South Dakota, because of the Black Hill. Love the Black Hill. Love Mount Rushmore. I love Native American background. That's part of my heritage. So
Yeah.
that's where home is for me.
Awesome. Awesome ride. Yep.
All right, next question's what's the most embarrassing song on your playlist?
Oh my God. Probably, Konnichiwa, bitches.
Yes.
Probably,
That's cool.
Konnichiwa, bitches.
All right, if you could time travel, which era would you go to and why?
Probably go back into the 14th century, but I would probably pose as a man. I would still be a female,
All right.
but I would,
Why 14th century?
because I love the whole knight and fighting on horseback and sword fighting.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I like
Sweet.
primitive
That's
warfare.
cool.
I like primitive warfare.
Yeah. Very cool. Learn something new about you again.
Yeah.
What's your favorite motorcycle movie of all time?
Biker women.
God. If you say,
Nice.
hey, if you said
Easy,
anything
easy.
different, you would be punished.
No, I'd have to say probably Easy Rider. Definitely Easy Rider.
Easy
That
Rider.
Your rider? Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Who was your movie crush when you were a teenager?
Oh gosh, Linda Hamilton, who's a good friend of mine now.
Oh, Linda Hamilton. Nice.
No way.
Terminator.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah Connor.
Nice. Yep, Sarah Connor.
Wife and I
If you could
married in
meet
her
and
house.
have dinner, got married in her house?
Yes.
Wow.
That's
That's cool.
crazy. All right. If you could meet and have dinner with one person, past or present, who would it be?
Shirley.
Nice. Cool. All right. Law you'd change if you were president for the motorcycle community.
Goodness gracious. That's a tough one. I have to think about that. One law I would change. I would probably have mandatory education for drivers so that they know how to work around motorcycles.
That's great.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Drive like you're paranoid.
If you could get up on stage and sing or jam with one band, who would it be?
Aerosmith.
Oh, nice. Good one.
Cool.
Good one.
Tyler.
Good one. Boston
All right.
boys.
What's one piece of clothing you own that you love but your spouse can't stand?
Oh my gosh. Goodness. What kind? You give me Christmas. Well, it's got to be one t-shirt. He's like, do you still want this thing? It's got all the holes in it.
That's funny.
All right, here's a fun one. If they made a biker-themed movie about you, who would play Gevin?
Oh, man. The top one. Kerry Washington.
Kerry Washington.
All right, cool.
He's a
Nice.
great actor.
He is. And I think that she could
All right.
pull it off. She'd have to work out though. Because
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
he is. And I think that she could pull it off. She'd have to work out though. Because
Right.
honestly it would be
Cox.
Angela Bassett, but Angela's
Very well
older
educated
and
answer there.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's great. What's the silliest superstition you follow before or after a ride?
I do a circle of safety. And it may look like I'm OCD when I do it because I'll tap everything. I'll like walk around my bike. I'll tap the front,
Yeah.
pull on thing, saddlebag. I do a
Mhm.
circle of safety. And it may look like I'm
That's funny.
OCD when I do it
You made it through. Congratulations.
Nailed it.
Awesome.
Thank you
awesome.
so much, Gavin. This was awesome. You're really fun to talk to. You're definitely a wild child, and you got awesome energy that is really fun to share. So thanks for sharing it with us today. We really appreciate
thank you so much for giving us that shot to chat with you and get to know you. We are stoked that we really got a chance to get to know you the way I think, just loose and fun, and your background. I mean, you've just lived and still living a very fun, organic, peaceful, passionate life, and keep that up, man. You're an inspiration not only to women but to people in general.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. I so appreciate the invitation.
Awesome. Well, best of luck to you, Kick Butt, this year. We want results on the Shovelhead, so as you're doing it, I wanted to ask you if you could, we got the One Gang community on the cyclesworldwide.com. You can post some pictures for the listeners and people to see the progress. It would be awesome to be able to get that, so we can spread your joy too.
Thank you. I will. I'll post some more pictures because, like I said, we just got one side of the tank on right now. We're trying to adapt the tabs that we have to weld onto the tank to get that finalized. So we're in the process of doing that. And I have been posting something. So yeah.
Awesome.
Definitely. Stay tuned. You'll see more of it for sure.
We can't wait.
All right.
We'll ring you at the end, maybe get you on that towards the end of the year. Kind of, I mean, you've got so many stories that we need like a 5-6 hour podcast to do in reality. So
yeah, for real.
We've got to keep this somewhat, but maybe the next one, we've got a couple of other things that we'd love to talk to you about. And then the progression of your motorcycle and possibly your trip out to Sturgis and things of that nature. So I think, and your organization that you're putting together. So like I said, just share your information with us. We'll get everything posted, and any way we can help, we'll help.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'll just direct everybody, if you want to see present pictures, present and past, there's pictures of the motorcycle, there's pictures of Quest on there, there's pictures of just about everything in my life. It's on the Instagram page as well as Facebook. You can find me on Facebook under Fax as well.
Yeah,
so
we'll link that. I mean, we follow you. We follow you now with Cycles Worldwide. So we'll share those links. And like I said, anything you have, you can send it our way. We'll post it out on the One Gang community page.
Oh, you know what? One last thing. My wife and I actually own a cabin up in the mountains we call it Lakota Cabin. We have a page for that as well. I'll send that over to you. Yeah.
Where is it?
Cool. Very cool. What is it, like
it's a little,
an Airbnb or something?
It's a little cabin that we have that's in the middle of the forest up in the Los Padres National Forest here in California, and overlooks the mountains. And it's just got a little wood burning stove in it, and we have it on Airbnb. And so I'm going to be doing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Taking like small groups of women, small groups of women, like a group of 4, to the cabin to spend time. But we have it on Airbnb right now. So if there's anybody that wants to, either ride the bike out, or if you want to like small groups of women, small groups of women, like a group of 4, to the cabin to spend time. But we have it on Airbnb.
Oh my gosh, it is.
Oh, you just pulled it up. Nice.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I'm in. Wow. Awesome. Well, thanks, Gavin. We'll catch up with you soon.
Pleasure. Thanks,
All
Gavin.
right.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks.
Or just,